Imagine you are standing in a room filled with mirrors. Not the clean, perfect mirrors of a department store, but ancient, warped-looking glasses, each clouded with the dust of ages. You see your reflection, but it's not quite right. In one, your smile is strained, a hollow imitation of joy. In another, your eyes carry a flicker of a rage you don't remember feeling. A third shows you stooped with a sadness that seems ancient, a sorrow inherited rather than experienced. You turn away unsettled, only to find that the room has no doors, and the reflections are still watching you, moving even when you are perfectly still. This is not a dream. This is the silent, unexamined architecture of your life. You live in this room every day. You just haven't been taught how to see the walls. We are raised on a powerful and intoxicating myth, the myth of the self-made individual, the author of our own story. Every choice, every triumph, every failure, we are told, is a product of our will. You chose your career, you chose your partner, you chose to be happy, or you chose the behaviors that led to your misery. It is a philosophy of absolute ownership, and it is the bedrock of modern identity. But what if this bedrock is nothing more than sand? What if the most significant decisions of your life were made for you long before you were ever aware a choice was being presented? Not by a divine entity or a predetermined fate, but by something far more intimate and insidious. A shadow that was born the same moment you were. Consider the paradox of your own reactions. Think of a time you were cut off in traffic and felt a surge of incandescent fury, a rage so disproportionate to the event that it left you shaking. Where did that specific intensity come from? Why that exact flavor of anger? Or consider the pull you feel toward a certain type of person, a pattern in your relationships you've sworn to break, only to find yourself right back in the same familiar dynamic with a different face, but the same script. You promise yourself you will be different, that you will choose better next time, yet the gravitational pull of the pattern is immense, almost planetary. We call it our type, a casual admission of a profound lack of freedom. We treat these deep, recurring patterns as mere personality quirks. But are they? Or are they the grooves of a record, carved by an unseen hand, and your life is merely the needle playing the same song, over and over again? This is the great, terrifying question that hums beneath the surface of our consciousness. If you are the sole author of your life, why do you so often feel like you're reading from a script you did not write? Why do your best intentions so often crumble in the face of ancient, automatic responses? Who is the ghost in your machine that flinches at criticism, that craves approval, that sabotages your success just as you're about to grasp it? We comfort ourselves with the language of psychology. We have triggers, insecurities, complexes, and we name the parts of the shadow, hoping that by labeling them, we can control them. But we are like children naming the monsters under the bed, believing that a name robs them of their power, while the monster itself only grows larger in the darkness, fed by our denial. The truth is, we are living with a silent collaborator, an invisible co-author who holds the pen more often than we do. It directs our passions, dictates our fears, and designs the very architecture of our perceived reality. It is the architect of that hall of mirrors, ensuring every reflection you see reinforces its own existence, its own power. It is not an external force. It is not separate from you. It is a part of you that you have been trained to ignore. A shadow self, whose motivations, whose history, and whose power are the most important story you will ever uncover. To continue ignoring it is to remain a puppet, dancing on strings you can't see, believing all the while that you are free. But to face it, to turn and truly look at the warped reflections, is to begin the only journey that matters. It is to ask the one question that can shatter the mirrors forever. Who or what is this shadow that controls my life? And how did it seize the throne of my soul? To answer the question of what this shadow is, we must first accept a disquieting truth. You are not one, but two. There is the self you present to the world, the curated, polished, and socially acceptable identity known as the persona. This is the mask you wear, the one that smiles on command, agrees when it's easier than dissenting, and performs the role of the diligent employee, the loving partner, the stable friend. It is a necessary tool for navigating society. But behind this mask lies another, more primal entity. And it is everything you are, but pretend not to be. The great psychoanalyst Carl Jung gave it a name that echoes with ancient truth. He called it the shadow. It is the dumping ground for every impulse, every desire, every weakness, and every strength that your conscious mind has rejected. It is the vault where you lock away everything you were ever taught was unacceptable. The creation of the shadow begins in the quiet moments of your childhood. A parent tells you, "Don't be so selfish." A teacher scolds you, "Nice children aren't angry." Society whispers, "Don't be too loud, too ambitious, too different." With each correction, a piece of your authentic self is sliced away and cast into darkness. Your natural aggression, your healthy selfishness, your righteous anger, your untamed creativity. They do not simply vanish. They are exiled. They become the first citizens of an inner nation of rejects, a burgeoning shadow self that grows in power with every denial. We spend our formative years learning this brutal alchemy of self-rejection, becoming experts at amputating the parts of our soul that fail to win applause. The persona becomes our accepted public-facing identity, while the shadow becomes our secret, unlived life. A life that seethes and churns in the unconscious, waiting for its moment to erupt. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche saw this process on a societal scale. He argued that civilization itself is a taming process, designed to domesticate the wild, powerful, and unpredictable human animal into a reliable, docile member of the herd. Morality, he contended, was often a tool used by the weak to suppress the strong, labeling natural instincts like ambition and dominance as evil. These powerful, vital energies, when suppressed, become part of the collective shadow of humanity. But what is suppressed does not die. It metastasizes. It twists into something far more monstrous than its original form. Your personal shadow is where your own repressed power lies, festering. The ambition you were taught to see as ugly becomes bitter envy. The anger you were forbidden to express becomes passive aggression and cynical resentment. The desire for freedom you were told was irresponsible becomes a self-destructive urge to burn your own life down, just to feel something real. The shadow is not evil, not initially. It is simply that which has been disowned. But like any abandoned child, it can grow into a figure of immense rage and sorrow. This creates the central battle of your inner world, a conflict that the existentialists like Jean-Paul Sartre would call an act of bad faith. You pretend you are only the mask. You insist, to yourself and to others, that the persona is the real you. You say, "I am not an angry person," and yet you are consumed by inexplicable irritability. You say, "I am not a selfish person," while your actions subtly manipulate every situation to your benefit. This denial, this refusal to acknowledge the totality of who you are, light and dark, is a flight from freedom. Because to be truly free is to be responsible for all of it. The shadow gains its power in this darkness of denial. It doesn't need your permission to act. It operates through a lack of self-awareness. It is the force behind your unintentional slips of the tongue that reveal a brutal truth. It is the architect of your self-sabotage, protecting you from a success your conscious mind craves but your shadow believes you don't deserve. It is the puppeteer behind your projections, the reason you feel such volcanic hatred for the arrogance or laziness you see in others. You are not judging them. You are screaming at a mirror, at the exiled parts of yourself you cannot bear to face. This is the shadow's most brilliant trick. It convinces you it is out there, in the world, in other people, anywhere but within you. And so you fight your wars externally, chasing enemies on a global stage or in your own home, never realizing the true enemy is within, and its control over you is deepening with every battle you wage against its reflection. The story written by your shadow is not one of grand, cinematic evil. It is a quiet tragedy of a life half-lived. Its consequences are not found in moments of dramatic villainy, but in the relentless, grinding erosion of your potential, your relationships, and your very perception of reality. The shadow's control is a masterpiece of subtlety, weaving itself so deeply into the fabric of your mind that you mistake its threads for your own. It achieves this control by hijacking the very machinery of your cognition, turning your own mental processes into the bars of your prison. Consider the cognitive bias of confirmation bias, the tendency to favor information that confirms your existing beliefs. This is not just a mental shortcut. It is the shadow's primary tool for reality maintenance. If your shadow is built upon the foundational belief that you are unworthy of love, it will steer your attention like a guided missile toward every piece of evidence that supports this claim. You will obsess over the one critical comment in a sea of praise. You will interpret a partner's bad mood as a referendum on your value. The shadow diligently filters your world, presenting you with a curated stream of proof that its dark narrative is true, while you, the conscious self, believe you are simply being realistic. This mental manipulation is reinforced by your very biology. Deep within your brain, the amygdala stands as the ancient sentinel of your emotional life. It cannot distinguish between a physical threat and a psychological one. So, when you encounter a situation that mirrors the original wound that created a part of your shadow, a dismissive boss who sounds like your critical father, a perceived abandonment that feels like a childhood trauma, the sentinel sounds the alarm. It triggers an emotional hijack, flooding your system with stress hormones. Your prefrontal cortex, the seat of rational thought and conscious choice, is effectively taken offline. In that moment, you are no longer at the controls. The shadow is. It speaks with your mouth, acts with your hands, and unleashes a torrent of pain or rage that is decades old. You call this losing your temper or having a breakdown. The neurological reality is that you were temporarily possessed by the ghost of an old wound. A coup d'etat in your own skull orchestrated by the shadow to protect itself and reassert its power. On a grander scale, this psychic architecture dictates not just personal lives, but the fate of entire societies. Cultures, like individuals, have shadows. The celebrated values of a nation, bravery, purity, strength, cast a dark silhouette. Everything that contradicts this idealized self-image is repressed into a collective shadow. The brutal history of conquest is reframed as a noble civilizing mission. The memory of systemic oppression is ignored, hidden behind platitudes of equality. This collective darkness does not vanish. It projects. A nation projects its own repressed aggression onto a foreign enemy, justifying war. It projects its disowned greed and corruption onto a domestic scapegoat, fueling political polarization and social unrest. You are born into this cultural matrix, inheriting not just a language and customs, but a prepackaged shadow. Your own biases, your own unconscious assumptions about race, class, and gender are not entirely your own. They are the whispers of your culture's unexamined darkness, a shadow that has been layered on top of your own before you even learned to speak. This makes the trap almost perfect. You are imprisoned by a force you cannot see, a force that uses your own mind to blind you, your own biology to overpower you, and your own culture to normalize your chains. The ultimate consequence, then, is a profound and tragic alienation. Alienation from your true self. You live your life on autopilot, guided by a complex web of unseen fears and unexamined beliefs. Your relationships become reenactments of old dramas, as your shadow seeks out partners who will play the familiar roles of critic, savior, or victim that it understands. Your career path is stunted, not by a lack of talent, but by the shadow's fear of the visibility that comes with true success, leading to chronic procrastination and self-sabotage. You feel a persistent, low-grade anxiety or depression, a sense of being a fraud in your own life, which is the soul's natural response to being disconnected from its own truth. The urgency of this predicament cannot be overstated. This is not a theoretical problem. This is the silent theft of your one and only life. Every day you spend unaware of this dynamic, you are ceding more territory to the shadow. You are allowing it to make your choices, feel your emotions, and build a reality that is nothing more than a monument to your own repressed potential. The prison is so complete, so perfectly integrated into your being, that escape seems impossible. How do you fight an enemy that wears your face and speaks with your voice? How do you break free from a cell when the walls are made of your own thoughts? This is the precipice of despair, and it is the necessary starting point for a true revolution. You stand at the edge of the abyss, staring into a darkness that wears your own face, and you ask how to fight it. The answer is the most radical and terrifying shift in perspective you will ever make. You don't. The war against your shadow is the very thing that gives it power over you. Every time you condemn it, repress it, or deny it, you are validating its exile. You are reinforcing the walls of its prison, a prison in which you are the secret warden and also the sole inmate. The war itself is the trap. To break free, you must do the one thing your entire life has trained you not to do. You must lay down your arms. You must turn to face the raging, cowering, monstrous thing in the darkness, and you must extend an invitation. The path to liberation is not through annihilation, but through integration. This is the great work of the alchemists, who sought not to turn lead into gold, but to transform the base, heavy, dark matter of the soul, the prima materia, into the light of integrated consciousness. Your shadow is your lead. It is heavy, it is dark, and you have considered it worthless. But it contains the gold. Your rage is not something to be vanquished. It is raw power. It is the energy to defend your boundaries, to fight injustice, to say no with the full force of your being. Integrated, it becomes courage. Your envy is not a sin to be ashamed of. It is a compass needle, pointing with unerring accuracy toward your deepest, most unacknowledged desires. Integrated, it becomes ambition and a map to your own calling. Your fear is not a weakness. It is the voice of ancient wisdom, the part of you that understands consequence and respects power. Integrated, it becomes prudence and discernment. To break free is to stop being the judge who condemns these parts of yourself, and to become the alchemist who sees the treasure hidden within the dross. The first act of this alchemy is courageous, unflinching self-observation. You must become a detective in your own life, hunting for the shadow's fingerprints. When you feel that sudden, disproportionate emotional reaction, that flash of fury in traffic, that wave of shame from a harmless comment, you must learn to stop, to breathe, and instead of pushing the feeling away, you must turn toward it with genuine curiosity. Ask it, what are you? What part of me is this that feels so intensely? What older, deeper wound have you come to show me? This is not an interrogation, but a conversation. You are learning to listen to the whispers from your own internal exile. At first, you may hear only incoherent rage or the whimpering of old sorrows. But if you keep listening, with compassion and without judgment, you will begin to hear a story. The story of the parts of you that you abandoned and what they need to finally come home. The second act is even more demanding. It is the disciplined withdrawal of your projections. You must begin to use your judgments of others as a mirror. The next time you feel a powerful, visceral contempt for someone, for their arrogance, their laziness, their stupidity, their weakness, you must pause, and you must ask the question that the ego dreads more than any other. What aspect of this person that I despise is also in me? This is not to say you must condone their behavior. It is to recognize that the emotional intensity of your reaction is the signal. That energy, that heat, is a sign that you are looking at a disowned piece of your own shadow. The people who trigger you most profoundly are your greatest teachers. They are unwitting messengers, sent by your unconscious to show you the work that needs to be done. To reclaim this projection is to take back a tremendous amount of psychic energy that you were wasting on fighting external battles, and to redirect it inward toward healing and integration. This is how you begin to dismantle the hall of mirrors, by recognizing that every reflection is, in some way, a part of you. This is not a path of perfection. It is a path of wholeness. The goal is not to become a saint, free of all darkness. It is to become a complete human being, with the courage to acknowledge and even harness the totality of your nature. This is where true power lies, not in the sanitized, fragile strength of the persona, but in the resilient, unshakable power of a person who is no longer at war with themselves. You have been shown the prison, and you have been given the key. The path of integration is laid before you, a journey into your own darkness, armed not with a sword, but with compassion. It is a heroic undertaking, demanding a courage that few are willing to summon. And you might reasonably ask, why? Why descend into the underworld of your own psyche? Why dredge up the pain and the shame you have spent a lifetime burying? The answer to this question is the final, most powerful realization, an insight that will not just change your life, but will fundamentally redefine your understanding of reality itself. Your shadow is not a design flaw. The suffering it has caused you is not a punishment. The entire dynamic, this agonizing dance between the person you pretend to be and the self you have hidden, is a sacred and necessary mechanism. It is the engine of your evolution. This is the process Jung called individuation. It is the journey from being a mere product of your cultural and biological conditioning to becoming a true individual, whole, conscious, and indivisible. Your persona, the mask, is what keeps you connected to the collective. It allows you to function in society, but your shadow holds the very qualities that make you unique. It contains your untamed power, your singular vision, your forbidden truths. The constant, painful friction between your persona and your shadow is the crucible in which your soul is forged. Without this tension, you would remain a generic human being, a predictable character, a copy of a copy. Your past struggles, then, were not meaningless. Your self-sabotage, your failed relationships, your deepest anxieties, they were not random misfortunes. They were symptoms of a profound inner calling. They were the desperate, clumsy attempts of your exiled self to get your attention, to force you to look into the darkness so you might finally become whole. Life was not happening to you. It was happening for your completion. The ultimate paradigm shift is this. The you that you think of as yourself, the conscious ego that navigates the world, is not the center of your being. It is merely the captain of a very small boat, floating on the vast, dark ocean of the unconscious. For your whole life, this captain has been terrified of the sea below, pretending the boat is all that exists. Shadow work, the journey of integration, is the process of learning to listen to the wisdom of the ocean itself. This total intelligence, the organizing principle of your entire psyche, conscious and unconscious, light and dark, is the true center. This is the self. The goal of your life is not to make the ego stronger, but to align it with the will of this deeper, vaster self. To integrate the shadow is to build a bridge between the boat and the ocean, to allow the captain to finally understand that its purpose is to serve the journey, not to dictate it. When this happens, your life is no longer driven by the ego's frantic need for control and approval. It becomes guided by a profound inner compass, a deep sense of purpose that emanates from the totality of who you are. This changes everything. You realize that you cannot have light without darkness, that the height of your potential is directly proportional to the depth of the darkness you have been willing to explore. A tree cannot grow to the heavens unless its roots have reached to hell. To be a good person is no longer the goal. To be a whole person is. You stop running from your contradictions and learn to become a vessel large enough to hold them. You can be both kind and ruthless, spiritual and primal, disciplined and wild. This is the end of the war. It is the embrace of the great paradox of being human. You can finally return to that hall of mirrors from the beginning. But now you do not turn away in horror. You look at each reflection, the saint and the sinner, the hero and the coward, the sage and the fool, and you recognize them all. You bow to them, because you finally understand that they are not distortions. They are all you. And the room was never a prison. It was a sanctuary, waiting for you to come home to the entirety of yourself. The great work is now before you. Not to be better, but to be more. Not to be perfect, but to be complete. Look within. The shadow is waiting, not to harm you, but to heal you.